Making our way through the Saturday card at Saratoga, the Belmont Stakes card at Saratoga. We're going to talk about races 9 and 10, the races that are leading you into the Belmont. They are part of the important late exotic sequences. The 9th race is the Jaipur, 10th race is the Met Mile, and Angela Hermann is here to discuss a couple of those races with me, and we'll talk a little bit about the Belmont. We'll be diving into the daily racing form past performances. They have, really everything that you need on a big week like this week, and they have actual packages that can save you a bunch of money for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the 4 days of racing coming up at Saratoga, you can get past performances and clocker reports for all 4 days, and then betting strategies for Saturday to help you out. Maybe you just want help with Saturday. They've got Saturday past performances for you, clocker reports for each and every day individually. And there's going to be a webinar coming up with some really sharp minds. Andy Beyer, Stephen Christ, David Aragona will host that one on Thursday. I've seen some segments on Canterbury recently where Angela Hermann is going through some past performances and giving some analysis. So you're someone who knows how to navigate these DRF past performances very well. How's it going, Angela?
Hello. Yes, I don't know what I would do without Formulator. Mostly to keep notes. You got to keep notes on what's going on throughout the course of the day so you don't have to watch the same replay 8 different times. But there's so much information in there. It gets easy to dive down a rabbit hole for hours at a time. And if you have not delved into Formulator, do it. But give yourself some time to explore through it. There's a lot of good stuff to delve through. And races like this, especially when you get 16 horses a field, a little more than I'm used to, but it still makes it a fun handicapping challenge. So 2 races, I think we'll be able to talk about an awful lot still.
And the 2 races that we're going to talk about are kind of very different, right? We'll have a big field sprinting on the turf, and then a much, much smaller field going a little longer on the dirt in one of the real quality, prestigious races with some nice horses in there, but we don't have the depth there. Let's start in race number 9 with the Jaipur. At the end, we'll finish up, and maybe you can give out a horse or a 2, anything that you like at Canterbury coming up, or just tell us about what's coming up at Canterbury soon in this weekend, because we're always excited about the action over there too. So let's make some money at Saratoga in the Jaipur, race number 9. 5.5 furlongs on the turf course. Let's just kind of mention some of the major players in here. First up, Cogburn, who has been very, very good. He's won 4 of his last 5, and the race that he didn't win was at Kentucky when he was beaten 3/4 of a length, and it's like a tricky turf course there. So he's been pretty close to perfect on the turf, and he's going to make his second start back of the year. So big figures, could take a step forward in here. Lots of positives with him. He's going to take a lot of money. You'll get towards the outside, Mischief Magic's another one who will get some support. He was actually favored over Cogburn last time out. Down towards the inside, Arzak is in really excellent form right now. He's won 3 of his last 4. He won his only start this year in the Shakertown where he beat Mischief Magic. So just from a gambling standpoint, Angela, those are probably a couple of the horses that'll be on a lot of folks' tickets and in a lot of folks' multi-exotics.
I would guess so. And I would guess that Cogburn is going to be even lower than his 2-1 morning line, simply by virtue of the IRAD tax. But he has been so good since they've moved him over to the turf. But I think it's worth noting before anything how big a difference that a half a furlong can make.
Yep.
Just a 16th of a mile can make for some of these turf sprinters, because there's not uniform distances across the board that they're all specialists at. Some are very good at 5. A lot of horses out in your neck of the woods, maybe not as much anymore, but used to be specialists going 6.5 down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And looking around at horses that could get right in the middle with 5.5, 6 furlongs on the turf was a starting point for me. So, Cogburn naturally stands out just because his last 2 wins have been at 5.5 as opposed to just 5 down at Lone Star. They've been on different kinds of surfaces and with some give in the ground. And with likely rain in the forecast on the weekend, it's, I guess, something that I've been keeping a closer eye on than I normally would. Shocker, I don't track the weather in Saratoga Springs very often, but everybody's been keeping an eye on it for us. And rain certainly seems imminent, at least for a while this weekend.
Yep.
So Cogburn, I guess, got the nod of those 3 for conditions and how that goes, and being able to win over different conditions, configurations, and distances. But It's also what drew my attention to the horse right next door. So, of those, I guess of the horses that are going to get well bet, Cogburn is the one that I couldn't authoritatively kick out. But I had to take a long look at Sosua Summer because of how well he has done at 5.5 and how well he has done at Saratoga. Now, granted, not against these types, but he did something that's not easy to do in January. Not easy to run down just might at the fairgrounds. That horse has been so tough over the years. He had beat him the prior start in the Richelieu Memorial, but Sosua Summer ran really well last year at Saratoga too. And even though Fauci picks up a lot of pieces, Sosua Summer did that from off the pace, has shown a bit more pace in recent times. I mean, he's a versatile sort. And being next to Cogburn and being able to track him throughout, I think might be a good strategy to employ at a way bigger price.
Yep.
And I think that this is kind of where I've centered my wagers in this race. I don't think I'll get 20-1, but a horse that likes this course that much, has that much versatility and an outside draw is very attractive to me. And trying to go 4 for 4 at Saratoga, not an easy task. But normally a horse with that kind of record wouldn't be 20-1, but he's going to be because of the depth of field that he's up against. So he was definitely the one that caught my eye right off the bat.
Yeah, and this is something that happens in these sprint races all the times, right? The difference between jumping up from some of the races that he was in to a graded stakes race is just not quite as big as it is in other divisions because there just aren't as many races here. Like he absolutely could fit with this group. Completely agree. I have him pick third. I have him as a must, like pick 4, pick 5. If this is a race that you're spreading, these are the types of horses you're looking for. You're looking for big prices that you can make cases for. You're looking for a horse who has a race last time out where he had some legitimate trouble. You can put a line right through it. And you figure this is a spot that they probably really wanted more because of how much they liked Saratoga, knowing that these races were going to be at Saratoga instead of at Belmont or Aqueduct where they would have been. And everything at Saratoga is perfect. This is a horse who can get different kinds of trips. I don't think he's going to be close or anything to the lead, but he doesn't have to be dead last, right? So that's what's nice is in turf sprints, you can just be a little bit adaptable. And with an aggressive rider, I would think he could be more mid-pack, right? With someone like Saez. That's just being in races like this too, Angela, just being a place or 2 or 3 ahead instead of having to launch from dead last. Sometimes that could be the difference.
It definitely can be. And just being able to keep yourself out of harm's way with the outside draw, he just has more choices. He doesn't have to decide to tuck in. He doesn't decide to have to go right away. Saez will at least have some wiggle room in which to choose. And last time when he was down on the inside in the Shaker Town, it kind of looked like he had to take the opportunities when they came, maybe not necessarily when he would have wanted to. And the fact that he was so far behind a couple of horses that you mentioned earlier that are going to take a lot of money in here, I think will ensure that the value is still there. The question will be the Lasix. 2 of his worst races, at least his 2 on the page, have come without Lasix. So I'm hoping that that's maybe just an anomaly, some trips those days. He doesn't seem to care for Aqueduct as he does some other turf courses. I had to massage the numbers and kind of move some things around with this horse and, be more forgiving with him than with some of his competition to make a case for him. But I mean, that's the fun of handicapping, trying to find the right horse in the right spot. I would prefer him than some other horses that I like a bit more towards the inside. We've done a number of these, and I'm inclined to go for speed horses. So Dancing Buck caught my attention right off the bat.
He's in the mix for me too, right? Because what's nice is he can sit a little bit too.
Yes.
If he has to, and he might have to at 5.5. He's just in great form right now. He's going to make the 3rd start of the form cycle. I just like lots of positives for him. I want him in pick 4s, pick 5s, whatever type of multis that you're playing. One crazy horse that I really don't know if he's good enough to win, but I'm going to throw him in a few spots is No Name Mets. Mainly because he just has to go. Like, he's not a sitting off the pace type horse. And when he was off last time, he just doesn't have a chance that way, even against softer. I think with the blinkers on and with the Tory coming back aboard, that I would not be shocked if this horse clears the field early in this race. I have no idea how good, like how much he can hang around. And he might have just been a really precocious horse last year that hasn't been able to catch back up. But if he's progressing a little bit and he just catches a complete flyer out front, I was looking at Dancing Buck and you're kind of looking through the rest of the field, there's not that much early speed for this type of a race, where sometimes you can get 6 or 7 of the horses in the field that all are just got to go to the lead. This race, there might only be 2 or 3 of them, which is why I upgrade him. But I do have to say right off the bat that anytime I want to think positive about him, I start thinking a little bit about the Astros and Bregman and everything. And I don't like it. But I do think No Name Mets could outrun his odds in this particular race. I wouldn't be shocked. The one that I'm kind of intrigued by, Angela, because I never know what to do with turf sprinters that come from outside of the U.S. because the speed a lot of times here is so different than how these other races will play out. A horse like Star of Mystery, from a class standpoint, he absolutely would fit with this group. But does he get the type of a race shape here that he might need in order to win this race going 5.5 furlongs?
I mean, the thing with her is that, I mean, I don't like her as much as her stablemate coming from off the base, just with his
and facing
experience.
The boys, right? And facing older too. That's a lot to deal with.
Well, and you look at her last 4, I mean, as opposed to her set of 2-year-old races where even though she was in the rear, she was still getting out okay. Now it's been dwelt, held up, slow away.
Way different styles.
Yes, and if she's slow away here, she's going to get run off her feet.
Even as I was pointing out, especially if this is a race that's not cooking like they normally might be in this type of a race.
Exactly. Yes. So, and I was drawn towards speed too, for what you said. I mean, you look up and down this, a lot of these closers that have built their reputations with their big late kicks have a lot of speed cooking up front and looking to get away from each other, and they never do. But I could definitely picture a No Name Mets, even a Dancing Buck. I mean, maybe slipping away from Cogburn, maybe slipping away from Coppola. I can't imagine there being a line of 5 or anything going into the turn. Maybe a couple, and maybe they'll keep it honest enough. But I don't think that it'll be the boiling pace that you see in a lot of 5 furlong races, especially, but in a lot of these graded turf sprints. You would just normally see a lot more than you get on paper with this particular group, which makes it fun, but also just gives a little extra push to some horses who do have speed, even if it's positional speed, but that aren't reliant on a meltdown.
So it's like a microcosm of the last year or 2 of my gambling handicapping life is Filio di Ariana on May the 4th, in that she's in a field of 14, or he's in a field of 14. He runs really well that day. He was 30-1. He was second. He beats 12 other horses. He wasn't going to win at any point, but he ran a bang-up race, beat a bunch of other horses, and I got nothing. That's just
worst beat of your life.
Well, I wasn't going to get beat right on the wire, right? But it just is one of those things where it's it's frustrating when you feel like you may have been on the right horse at the right time, but you got beat by one horse, or you got in a little bit of trouble. He's actually an interesting horse in these shorter races. I think I might like him a little bit better at 6, actually, than at 5.5. I think what we saw last time out. And for me, I kind of have a hard time going back to him when I liked him. He ran really well at 30-1 last time. I don't know if he's going to get that much better of a trip than he did. He was getting a pretty nice trip. Cogburn was just a little bit better. I'm just kind of going through some other horses in here who may have run well recently. Who are others that we didn't mention, or anyone else that you'd like to mention?
Well, I did look at Arzak a little bit, just because, I mean, he's run at Saratoga in the past, but not for the glowing reasons that I looked at Sosua Summer. Arzak has run a mixed bag of races up at Saratoga, and I have to wonder if he's not bolstered by how many times he's run recently at Keeneland. He's won 2 of his last 3, but both of them were at Keeneland going 5.5. Seems very much a fan of that course. You look down the rest of them: Laurel, Saratoga, Woodbine. I mean, even Kentucky Downs. He doesn't run anything really above par unless he's at one of his favorite tracks. You see that sometimes with turf horses. I mean, they have their favorite courses. Some need to bring it with them, some don't. I'm not saying he's that kind of horse, but he may take more money than I would be interested in, because if you caught him in 2 of his last 3 wins, you'd get over 11-1. He's not going to be close to that today, and you just don't know if this is necessarily his favorite place, and if he won't regress a little bit off the Shakertown because it was such a big effort on his part. He's one that I guess I would lean against, or I would at least use underneath, but I was looking at year 11, the Brazilian, Filio de Ariana,
Yeah.
and I'm with you. I mean, they run him in 7 furlong races at Woodbine, and it's almost automatic. But he can, those kind of horses can be tough to find a spot for. I'm sure he would love the hill out there, but
Oh, I know. He
just
you're
hasn't had
right.
the opportunity.
He would be perfect down the hill too, and I think he'll run well again here. I don't, and I not maybe not to win, but I think he shows up and runs well more than he doesn't. Like he usually needs an excuse to not fire well. He was actually in this race a couple years ago. He just didn't really fire, and that was off a bit of a layoff, and he actually was behind Casa Creed that day. And then they came back to Belmont again last year, and he ran really well in the poker behind Emmanuel and was really good going a mile. So this is a horse who shipped and run well in different tracks, and they've always been very high on him. He's one just to keep an eye on for the right race, because if he finishes fourth in here, beating a couple lengths, he'll kind of fly under the radar. And then there might be a spot for him where they do go 6 or 6.5, maybe like a Kentucky Downs somewhere soon, or that just might fit him a little bit better. But it is a different style of a turf sprint where it just doesn't feel like they're going to be lining up all across the track. And I think because of that, maybe if you want to upgrade some of the horses who you think could sit a little closer. And that's what Angela and I did. We both mentioned the 3, Dancing Buck. I talk about a long shot in the 7, No Name Mets. Angela mentions the 9, Sounds of Summer, who I had in my 3rd and 4th spots too. I'm definitely using in pick 4s. And it sounds like we both feel like of the shorter prices, or of maybe the horses to beat, it's kind of hard to knock Cogburn for what he's done recently.
It is. And I think that I tried to kick him out. I couldn't. I'm going to probably fade Arzak a little bit. I'm not going to use the 12 on top. Mischief Magic isn't a horse for me to use on top. He puts himself behind the 8 ball sometimes with where he's positioned in the race. I think you had the right horse on Derby Day. I mean, I had to give you a little crap about him, but Filo de Ariana was a great pick, and one that would be useful for vertical purposes. And even if I don't use him in pick 4s and pick 5s, he'll be on my tickets. The 9 will be, Dancing Buck will be, and that will probably be the extent of it for horses that I'll incorporate into plays, but they'll keep each other's prices fair. I loved this race, and it just gives you a bit more opportunity to work vertically as opposed to the Met.
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating about horse racing, right? We go from this race where we are making cases for 7, 8, 9 different horses, different types of trips, different styles, and then we move to the Met where we have a small field, but we have some quality horses, and some quality horses that you can, poke holes in, and you have some question marks about, because both National Treasure and White Abarrio come in from the Saudi Cup. They have not raced since February, so they have a few months off to deal with, and the shipping that comes with a trip like that. You never really know how much that's going to take out of you. A horse like White Abarrio now, he's getting a little bit older too. He's now in the middle of his 5-year-old season. So those are the two that, from any type of gambling standpoint, you got to figure out what you're going to do, how you're playing this race, because it's in all the multis. This is the pick 3 leading you into the Derby. So it's in the pick 4 and the pick 5 and the pick 6 and a bunch of the 2-day and 3-day exotic wagers. We got to start with those two. National Treasure, White Abarrio. National Treasure showed up in the Saudi Cup. He ran his race. He was just 4th. He was beaten a length and a half. He won at 1 mile and 1/8 in the Pegasus, and he won the Preakness. I don't think he really wants to go that far. I mean, he can get that, but 1 mile is probably his best trip. I'd be honest. He ran really well in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile when he lost to Cody's Wish that day. So let's start with him, and I guess, and the two of them. Which of them do you prefer, and why?
Oh, I would take White Abarrio 8 days a week. It's just something with National Treasure. I've been against him for a good part of his life. It's worked 9 times, but I
was going to say, he's really, overall, for a horse who is one of the better older horses and the better horses in training right now in the U.S., he's only won 3 times.
I know. And there's been a lot of rest in between some of them. I don't love playing him necessarily as a fresh horse. It doesn't seem to be when he's at his best. And that's what we're getting today. But drawing inside of White Abarrio doesn't help him either. I I just wasn't a big fan of that Preakness that he ran in.
No.
I'm still not necessarily. That's why I'm not big on him or Blazing Sevens. I didn't know what was going to come of that. Yes, horses have gone different ways.
The second choice in that race was going to be First Mission, and he got scratched a couple days before, and he
Yeah.
would have at least been a major contender there.
Right. There was something missing from that Preakness. And well, I mean, besides the scratch, it didn't wow me. It hasn't wowed me since. He has, shut me up a bit in the Dirt Mile and in the Pegasus, but he's just, I can't get on board with him again as a fresh horse at the price. If you were to provide me some sort of value, and, for a Baffert horse, I guess he does provide value considering he's only been favored twice in his life, but that's either by virtue of being against one of his stablemates that's better, or a White Abarrio sort of horse that's just better. He usually seems to find one or two that can run him down in most cases, or outduel him. And I think that White Abarrio can outduel him, especially to his outside. I would guess that Hoist the Gold, his only shot is to go after them too. Maybe White Abarrio gets a perfect trip sitting in third on the outside. Either way, the pendulum always swings back to White Abarrio for me. You can't use both of them in this scenario. You can't double your ticket in any of those horizontals that you mentioned, and there are a lot of them. So my vote goes to White Abarrio. He just has too many edges in this particular spot. But if I'm going to play something, especially in a vertical sense, it would only be exactas. It would only be with post time. And that would be the extent of my involvement in this. White Abarrio just has too many things pointing at him. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 or something like that is just what we're going to have to take.
I'm going to take a swing in a couple tickets with post time. And I think White Abarrio is I like White Abarrio better than National Treasure 2 is just a horse too. I just think he's better. And I'm not when he didn't fire in the Saudi Cup, it's not like he got beat by National Treasure. He just didn't fire that day. Just put a line right through it. And just that doesn't bother me there. If this is the perfect time for this horse to beat these horses, right? Where they're both a little bit short, they're both coming back, and they both might be moving early, and he could move right behind them. In a smaller field, he may not get caught in traffic, and this is a nice, legitimate horse. He's done very little wrong, and he actually fits well on speed figures too. I think this race, I'm going to play one with just him, and then I'm going to play one. My bigger ticket will be him and Abarrio, the two of them. But I win money, I'm kind of curious, because if he's like 4 to 4 or 5 to 1, I'm going to bet him to win. I don't want to play him at 7 to 2 or any shorter than that. But he's good enough to beat those two horses. He just needs the trip. And that's my only concern is in the small field, is it going to develop for him? But you were kind of mapping it out. Can we get Hoist the Gold on the lead, National Treasure not far behind, trying to keep him company, and then White Abarrio maybe a little bit fresh? I could see Blazing Sevens not wanting to be that far out of it either, like trying to stay close to them. And then all of a sudden, do we have 4 horses in this race trying to kind of keep each other company and jockeying for a position in here? And does that set up for post time, who's fit right now? He's in good form. And I think if there's ever going to be a chance in a race like this, where it's a small field, your two major contenders are both coming into this race with serious question marks. Like you and I have said, we both never really thought National Treasure was all that great. And White Abarrio comes back from Saudi Arabia after a real no-show. I'm going to include him in a few because I'm less concerned too about the double up with just adding another horse like this who's a price, because the addition of him in some tickets, him winning does really change the complexion of some of your late exotic tickets versus just a White Abarrio or a National Treasure in here. So, let's get, it sounds like you think this is a nice horse too. You just not sure if he can beat White Abarrio. And that's all I'm hoping is that maybe White Abarrio is a little bit short here, because I do think I think this horse is better than National Treasure, honestly. I really don't. It just comes down to trip, right? Like National Treasure can always get a better trip, and he has more speed. And if he just sits second and kind of falls into a really nice race, but I am bummed maybe we didn't get a few more in here, but like the top 2 are intriguing, and they're definitely 2 of the top 3 to 5 older horses right now. So the 2 of the big guns showed up in here, and they're both a little vulnerable in this spot. It's just there aren't that many options for trying to beat them. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah, I know. All I meant by you can't use both in any horizontals is using National Treasure and White Abarrio
Oh,
is
no
just,
way.
yeah, no
You,
go. But using post time is very usable. Like you outlined, I just don't think at this point he's as good as White Abarrio. Could he be? Yes. But is he right now? No. So in just trying to preserve my value, I'm just going to line those two up straight. Post time has tons of talent, but I would look for even more of a duel, even more of a setup for him than he would probably get. I take nothing away from him, though. He is a quality horse, and he has done everything that they've asked of him and continues to step forward. So no shame at all in using this horse, picking this horse. I mean, shoot, he's 8 for 10. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him other than he's running into White Abarrio, who drew to his outside. I can see him coming at the end. I can see White Abarrio having a little bit more, and that's it. That's really the only difference between those two. I don't think that one is leagues ahead of the other one in talent. It's just where they're at in their careers. So I won't knock or talk anybody off using post time on their tickets because I think he's obviously the value of the group until we see the board unfold. But I think you would get 5-6 to 1 on him by the time all is said and done. I think they
I
will
do
just
too.
crush White Abarrio.
Yeah, I do too. As we take a look at the 6-horse Met Mile, race number 10 on Saturday at Saratoga. Let's move a couple races to the 12th, Angela. That is the Belmont at Saratoga. So this will be a 1.25 mile Belmont. And it's a really nice field that we have. You know, you've got your Derby winner, you got the Preakness winner, you've got Sierra Leone, who's basically been the top of the division since his Remsen race. He's been right there, and he's been very good. Your runner-up in the Derby. A horse like Mindframe, who could be just an absolute freak. He's run the fastest Beyer speed figure of anyone in the field, but he'll probably face 9 horses better than any one horse he's faced in his races. So we don't have really any idea what his class is like there. I thought it was a really cool group that lined up. I mean, I don't know how many are really missing in here. Fierceness, he came back to work. It didn't seem like he was quite ready coming back out of the Derby yet. So they're going to point to the Haskell. And since Mystic Dan came here, that meant Torpedo Anna won't be facing the boys. So she'll be in the Acorn, which makes that race stronger, and that a really strong race too.
Really good race.
Right. Just it's a good race here. It makes sense. It's cool. Like, you're going to get bettable prices on a lot of horses if you're trying to beat Sierra Leone, who is a very beatable type. I mean, you can see why anyone would try to beat that horse because of his running style. He's a little bit quirky, but at the same time, he's really solid and consistent hitting the board. You kind of feel like he's always going to unlaunch that rally. I had a blast like looking through this race in the last week as the field was being formulated. And give us some of your thoughts. Who are some of the horses that you like or maybe don't like? How are you going to be playing this thing?
Well, maybe we are taking opposite views on this one, but not even so much it being at Saratoga and it being 1.25 miles. It's just how recently most of these guys have run against each other and how little time it is to really develop a horse into turning the tables. Unless there was a major excuse for whoever you like in the Derby, 5 weeks is not that much time to try to get somebody who was way, way back to get way, way better and beat Sierra Leone and beat Mystic Dan. That's my only problem with trying to find value in the Belmont. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Seize the Gray, go give it a shot on the front end again. I mean, who's to say that he wouldn't be able to do it? It's not like he's a one-trick pony. It's not like he's not bred to do it. It's not like he didn't draw perfectly to just go out there and gun it and go as far as he can, as fast as he can. He would probably be my biggest upset candidate, but I just think it's Sierra Leone's race to lose. It is the least sexy view you can take of this race. It's not exciting at all. I don't care for either one of the Pletchers. This is plan B and plan C for them. And after watching the Peter Pan, I don't know how you felt about it, but I didn't look at anybody in that stretch run and go, man, I hope that horse is at the Belmont. Like,
I wanted to like them more. Antiquarian, I'd probably like a little more going a little longer because I do just think he's really grindy. So I think if it was 1.5 miles, he would probably be able to upgrade over some other horses who may not like it quite as much.
Okay.
And yeah, with the Wine Steward too, like, he's such a tough horse to knock because he's always right there. But that felt like the race he was supposed to win. The Peter Pan, where he gets the jump on Antiquarian and he's able to move there. And so that to me felt like, gosh, he didn't win that one. I wouldn't be shocked to see him underneath because of his running style. He could always kind of outrun his odds, and he puts up a good fight. I mean, I was so impressed with Mystic Dan in the Preakness, honestly, because that's the one where I think sometimes after in the 2 weeks, you come back and you just get the horse that's just not as sharp, and they don't give you that same effort. He was really good. He was really good, finishing second that day. Sees the Gray got out front. Imagination didn't end up going, and great job by Sees the Gray and Torres just to take the initiative there and to get really aggressive.
Yeah.
I think there might be a little more speed in here, just with the possibility of the Wine Steward at Dornick in here, and then whatever they're going to do to the outside with Mindframe. To me, Angela, I kind of was saying, I want him on a pick 4 and some pick 4s and pick 5s that I have with other big prices before, but I would never bet this horse to win at 7-2 ever. No. It's one of those where if he was 6-1 or 8-1, I could bet him to win, but I could still see him being this freaky horse. And so if I was alive on some tickets and then you and I had a couple of the nice prices that we like in the turf sprint, or if post time wins, I definitely want this horse just in case, but I could not play him at any price that he's going to be close to in this race. It feels way too short for me. I was
just going to say, if he was in any other hotel, would he be at that price? No. I mean,
right?
You take the horse with those credentials and you add a 0 or something on the end if he doesn't come from the camp that he's in. Respect to them, but that's a big ask at 7-2. I'm with you.
Yeah. I thought Dan and Leon were the horses to beat, the safe kind of measuring stick horses. And then my price horses were Honor Marie and Resilience. I liked Resilience in the Derby, and his middle move was pretty good. He just moved really wide. He won't have to be as wide this time. Mott wasn't sure if they were going to run here. The reason why they did, he's training really well. And I thought the quote from Mott made a lot of sense. He said, we really like this horse, and I want to make sure he's not a 1.25 mile horse right now, because we have a couple other shots later in the year. So if he runs well here, then we can at least come back and Travers and Breeders' Cup Classic and those types of races. If not, they will know right now when he's doing well, okay, and they don't have to try him at 1.5 miles to find that out, right? So that this is one of those horses who he wouldn't be in here if it was 1.5 miles, for sure. He is only in here because it's 1.25 miles. He'll get a better trip here from the inside draw. He's training really, really well. And I just don't think, kind of reminded me with what they did with Catching Freedom, bringing him back in the Preakness. Like, I just don't think this barn would put him in here at all unless they were very, very excited on him running a big race. So my price horses that I'll use at least in like tries and stuff like that, and I'll probably throw them in a pick 4 or 2, would be the 2 and the 8, who I'm just going to toss the Derby. That was a brutal trip. It's not it's not funny. I'm laughing because I'm like, I'm looking at some of my notes, and when you think about like horror trips in the Kentucky Derby, this was sort of one of them where the horse actually ran pretty well. Look at the running line. He made up about 10 lengths in an instant and then just faded. But he was forced to do that because he was like, getting shuffled. It was just a horrendous trip for Honor Marie early on. It can't be worse in this field. And if you like this horse a little bit going into the Derby, you're probably just playing him off of his Louisiana Derby, where I could certainly see him, being an underneath horse. So those would be a couple of the value plays for me. But before we get out of here, let's talk some Canterbury. So what's the schedule coming up? As you and I record on Wednesday, when are we racing this week? And do you have a play, or can we make some money at Canterbury and tell us what's happening over there?
Well, we do start Thursday racing tomorrow. It's going to be our first Thursday evening of racing. It's a pretty good card. Looks like the weather is going to cooperate. We always have to keep an eye on that here, but it's going to be a beautiful weekend. And we've had some very, very good turf races thus far. I will tell you, there's stakes racing on Saturday, and it could get a little bit chalky. We do have our Minnesota bred stakes in the middle, but you'll see some names that you might recognize. Cupid's Crush, Dr. Oscar, the Alligator Hunter. They're all going to be out here on Saturday after the Belmont. We're going to do what we did with the Preakness and put the Belmont between our first and second races. We'll take a break and then we'll get back to the evening of racing. But I do want to mention race number 6 on Thursday night. Race number 6 on Thursday night is a good example of how good our turf racing has been. And there's going to be a heavily bet horse from Gary Shearer's barn named Hattie Bloom. And he has a firster right next door who can run. Cece's Heart started out down at Keeneland. Then she went to Florida. Now she's here. And these two, as well as a horse named Too Practical and Raytastic, are all in the middle of the field. And this will be our final pick 3 of the day. I know it's a strange race to dive into, but this is a good example. It's our final thoroughbred race of the day, but it's a good example of some of our turf racing, how evenly matched it can be, and where all the different horses come on paper. I mean, you see charges coming from Oaklawn, the Fairgrounds, Hawthorne, Turf Paradise. Here, if you haven't looked at Canterbury Racing, definitely take a look at tomorrow night's card. I just wanted to use that as an example of how interesting it can be to try to handicap horses coming from so many different parts, just like, up at Saratoga. And it sometimes the payoffs are even better because these horses don't have all that established form. So definitely take a glance at that. We have 2 pick 5s on the day. One starts in the first, one will start in the fourth. They're both 10% takeout wagers. And like I said, the weather's supposed to be great. And these kind of races are what make them difficult and make them pay. So get your homework started. You have until tomorrow at 5:00 to kick it off. But I will be on there. Kevin will be on there. And we'll go Thursday, Saturday, Sunday for the time being until July when we add Wednesdays. And then that'll be a very busy time around here, but fun right in the heart of the summer. That's what we got going.
If you're someone who, you pride yourself as someone who does a lot of work, if you look at replays and you look into pedigrees and stuff like that, you will really succeed in races like the one you pointed out when you have horses coming from all over the place. Because if you're going to put in the work there, you'll just find things and that other people won't want to put the time in for. And it reminds me at Canterbury, very similar to why I've liked playing a lot of the races through the years at Sam Houston when we could, and at Louisiana for the same sort of reasons, where you will get horses that just come from all these different places and ship in. And it's so challenging to look through their replays and to find them. And you'll get horses that want to run on grass, but may not get the chance to run on grass in other places, or against other levels because they might be in a little too tough in some of those spots, but they're grass horses and they just need a chance to get an opportunity to run there. So we'll be playing the races at Canterbury, and every time we do, we'll be stopping by and taking a look at who Angela has and getting some help there. Folks, Saratoga, this is going to be weird, huh, Angela? Like a good weird, though. Like a good vibe. I'm just curious how it's going to feel watching the Belmont races at Saratoga for the first time this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Everything you need. You can get packages with clocker reports and past performances. Thank you so much. We've been definitely picking your brain quite a bit lately, and now we'll have, after this, a little bit of a calm with kind of national big races. You'll be
let
very
it
busy
heal
with
for a
Canterbury.
while.
And then we pick things up with like the big Saratoga meet and the Del Mar meet, and that's when we really have some fun summer racing. So maybe we'll talk with you one of the next big Canterbury days, and we can go through a sequence there.
Sounds great. Yeah, there's a turf festival coming around the corner, so I'd love to talk to you then. I'd love to see all of you out here if you can. If you do stop by Canterbury, make sure to say hello. Hopefully we make you money.
Give her a follow on Twitter at Angela Hermann 15. Thank you so much, friend. Appreciate your hard work always. Love chatting races with you. You always lead me to a horse or two that wasn't on my radar. So always a nice couple ads for me and some of my tickets. And we wish you the best of luck this weekend at Canterbury too.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me on. Good luck to you and everybody listening. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.
Talking to Angela again real soon. Always have her back handicapping races with us here. If you're listening on the podcast, we have plenty more to come. If you're watching videos, if you're on YouTube, check it out. Do me a favor, give us a subscribe and a like there. And that way, every time we have videos, they'll get sent to you automatically. And we wish you the best of luck in all of your wagers this week. Belmont at Saratoga.